Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Friday Morning Digest. Thank you for joining us, even as we engage in today's discussion. We are talking about youth and entrepreneurship, looking at the future of entrepreneurship, looking at how youth are engaging with entrepreneurship, and just looking at different models and different patterns that God seems to be releasing. One of the things that has been said about this year is, in spite of everything that is going on around us, is the fact that God wants to bless his people and God wants to prosper his people. And I believe that one of the ways in which God is going to prosper his people and to bless his people is through entrepreneurship. So don't go away. Call a friend, to send a message to a friend, tell them to watch this program, and we have an interesting program lined up for you today. I just want to welcome my colleague, Bwana Gideon, to say hello.
Good morning, viewers. I trust that you've been well. And this is an interesting discussion that you don't want to miss. We have a very, very interesting friend, and I call him a friend as well. So, without much ado, I want to invite him to introduce himself so that we can know him. Karibu.
Thank you. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you, Pastor Arnold. Yes, my name is Alex Kamanga Mwangi. I am one of the co-founders and the team leader of a platform known as Fundis. And we describe it as a simple way that allows individuals, households, and organizations to be able to find and hire all these sorts of informal workers that we hire on a day-to-day basis, be it at home, at work, or anywhere in between. So these would be the likes of your plumber, your carpenter, your mechanic, and what have you within that space. Yes, so that's what we do.
I find that name very interesting, Fundis. I mean, it really just fits into what you're doing. How did the name come up?
Well, like many other things in the process of building. So Fundis was an exercise into looking into where do we see ourselves 15 years from now, 20 years from now. So it just happens that from this East African space, first of all, Fundi is a common word that describes anyone who has a skill. But then when we looked then globally, if you go to the southern parts of the continent, a Fundi also happens to be a very learned person or a super expert. So this then became something we felt that as we grow, if you were to think about, let's say, Amazon.com, if you were to think about Facebook.com, Fundis.com eventually would be something that's short, catchy, and it's a good reference to actually what we are trying to do.
Wow, yes. Wow, excellent, excellent. How did you venture into tech? Because your background is in legal,
yes.
So I'm thinking legal and tech are very far away. How did you venture from one side into the other?
Yeah, that was a huge transition, and there's a story to it. So around the year 2014, 2015, so I happened to have just been graduating from the university, but at the same time I was also in Bible school around the same time. And then coming into the space, for me, I was always passionate around the area of building things. I'm more excited around finding small ideas that, well grown, could have a huge impact. So even going to campus at some point, I knew I wanted to venture into the world of building something. I just didn't know what. So around the first 1 year when I was now in legal practice, so I happened to have worked for a mid-sized firm that had a good establishment in the country. We had a huge clientele around the SME space going downwards. Okay. So towards the end of that first year, I ended up now having a placement as a volunteer, actually, working for two other tech founders. But for me, it was more of a way of learning how do they start, how do they get stuff done. And between now 2017 to towards the end of 2018, I felt I had learned enough. and enough to go run something by ourselves. So Fundis comes about around April of 2018, which was now accumulation of finding the next opportunity, because for me now this seemed as a big growing space. And if you look from then to now, I've actually not been mistaken, because we are still growing.
Wow,
and
nice.
that trend seems to, it will still remain the same the next 10 years.
Yeah, nice,
Yes.
nice. Yes. Yeah.
Wow, so I can see you're a young man. And yeah, I would call you, you know, a big shark in this space, because I don't know who are your competitors, but I obviously, this idea is the only one I've heard. I'm the only one. I've heard you mention about Fundis. I've not heard other companies. Maybe you can tell us more about your competitors, people who are doing similar things.
Yes. Well, so we are not the only ones doing these, and I often say that anyone should actually be a bit worried if you find yourself you are the only one doing something, because it could be others have tried it and failed, or you're doing something that's not worth doing. So gig platforms are not really new globally. So if you think around platforms like Meet and Boot in the Scandinavian countries, if you think about Thumbtack in places like the States, it's just that this is now a concept that's growing on the continent. And this is because our economies continentally are characterized by huge informal sectors. And they have not been functional very well. So we are moving to a space where we are taking most opportunities online.
Okay.
So here locally, there are a few other guys that are doing this. Two of them quite new entrants, maybe between the last 1-2 years. But before that, we were predominantly competing with an actual platform that actually was well capitalized, had been here from maybe 2015. Was already planning to start growing into other countries. But me doing that transitions, beginning of last year, they closed down. So we always were, it was more of a two-horse race, but there have been a couple of other guys who have tried these and closed shop. And for us, the basic idea behind this is that we believe it's a fundamental problem that needs to be solved. The only thing that maybe has kept us around for some time is our approach around what we are doing, because we think the people who we are solving the problem for need to be super involved every step of the way. So what that has meant for us, we have segmented our journey into 3 phases. So we are actually now just towards the close of the first phase. So for us, it's a long-term plan, it's a long-term game. We are not in a hurry. And we want to get this to a place where it serves the needs of the entire continent. So we are not the only ones. There are a few other guys, not well known, but Fundis for some time is a platform that is being known. And this is because the solution is also being taken by the service providers themselves, the artisans themselves. So we believe for it to work for us, it must work for them first. So we want them to own it. It's their stories, it's about their careers, it's about their jobs, and their decent livelihoods as well.
So you're the market leader in this space?
Yes, it's safe to say right now we are a market leader, but we are not only content with that.
Okay.
From day one, our thinking has been, when you think about solutions being built in the West or from the East, people in Silicon Valley or people from Beijing, they build for the rest of the world.
Okay.
So we believe there is nothing wrong in building from East Africa, and you're building with the rest of the world in mind. So our goal is not just for Kenya. We just see Kenya as a launching pad. And the couple of services that we are doing just as the entry point, the goal is, can we be able to literally rethink how work gets done, the entire informal sector, not just for Africa, but perhaps even for countries like the ones in Southeast Asia. So we believe we are solving something fundamentally for the whole globe.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as you're talking, funding. You know, how does an organization like yours get funding?
Yes.
And I know you told us just offline before we started the discussion that there's some jobs you had to repeat 4 or 5 times and you lost a lot of money in the process.
Yes.
Is Alex liquid? Can I get a loan to buy a car or something?
Well, and I mean, also, as a country right now, we are actually in a very interesting space. as you talk about funding specifically. So honestly, I would say the last 2.5 years of our existence, this has been what I would say a roadside MBA. Learning while you're doing. So the first whole 1 year of Fundis, we actually spent that year in an acceleration program. Acceleration program to understand, one, how do you find the capital? How do you build a team?
Okay.
How do you find a product market fit? So we've been lucky, I would say, and with very cautious definition of that word luck. It's a lot of work going towards where we are. So we've been very lucky where we are right now. We are now funded by a couple of angel investors from here in Kenya, family-led funds who see value in what we are doing. But now, recently, we just also closed another major funding from actually the government of Netherlands, what is known as the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment.
Okay.
But we are actually now doing our first seed raise, so we are almost 3/4 into it. But while still doing that, our first and major focus has always been, we say that sales fixes everything, right? So because as a space, we are getting to a place where we are suddenly celebrating capital raises more than we are celebrating serving customers. So for us, the guiding principle is that sales fixes everything, right? So we are very, very, very conscious. Does this make any business sense, right? Are we solving a problem worth solving? And one way to know a problem worth solving is a problem that people are willing to pay for. So the question would be thinking, let's say you as Pastor Arnold, if you're looking for, let's say, a mechanic, would you be willing to pay significantly more for a carpenter or a mechanic who will show up on time, who will show up with the right tools, who will show up ready to do the job, or who will give you a satisfactorily done job? That's value. So the measure of value, what is more important to us? So we are more focused around it making business sense for us and for the artisans that we serve. Yes.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Tech, this tech thing, in fact, this week, by the way, is digital and tech week. I've actually been trying to focus to find out where the action is, where the party is, but it's a digital and tech week. And tech is becoming a big thing in Kenya.
Yes.
In fact, I was commenting to somebody the other day that, these days in the paper, in the news, the visibility, the focus seems to be more on the CS Musheru than the CS Matiang'i. So I'm wondering whether there's a shift. I don't know whether it's because of elections. But I'm asking, what do you see as the future of technology in Kenya and in Africa generally?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question because it's not just a national or continental question that it's actually a global question. And if you think about it, what tech really is simply a way of making life easier, right? So Kenya, statistically, right now we have over 32 million mobile subscribers, which is a really, really, really huge by all standards. Our connection right now on the internet side, we have about 8 million connections and growing. So what's now happening, there will be a fundamental shift around this space because more handheld devices are getting into more hands, right? And internet connection is growing. So what this will now create is what is a convergence for tech is simply around, we have had basic fundamental questions that have not been working for a very long time. So, for instance, if you think about it, so overall, over 80% of all the new jobs being created in Kenya is of date, and the last 10 years, all those jobs are in the informal sector. Yet we are growing the number of transitions in terms of education, let's say, to high school, to university, and yet when young people come to the job market, right, 4 out of every 5 new jobs being created, those jobs are in the informal sector. So it means, by definition, that young people are graduating and not finding jobs. So fundamental question of what next, right? So that brings in now the intersections of all these things people are trying to do offline. Now, if you think about schooling, if you think about transport, if you think about farming, agriculture, if you think about the whole urbanization space, what will happen is now young people will try to solve their problems. And the one way of it happening is going to be through technology. Right now, the media space has been completely disrupted. I no longer have to wait for a newsroom or anchor to know what's happening, because anybody with a cell phone is potentially a journalist,
reporter,
right?
yeah.
Any person with an app, with a mobile phone, potentially has all the tools that could go into running a small business, right? So I no longer need to hire an accountant, because there are even free apps to do this. So fundamentally, what will now happen continentally? So our economies are characterized by huge informal sectors that have not been functional very well for a very long time. Towards now transition into more work, this is where now the gig economy is going to keep, growing. Right now, it's somewhere in Kenya only, the online gig economy is somewhere around what? Maybe worth of 345 million US dollars. But by next year, the larger informal sector is going to be worth close to maybe 28 billion US dollars. So it means if you look at the chunk of what is taken, that's Kenya only. We're not even talking of the continent, right? And now with the things, let's say the African continental free trade area, suddenly now, those of us below the ages of 34, right? It's no longer a question of I'm eyeing, if I'm in Kisumu, I'm not eyeing Nairobi. I'm not thinking of Dar es Salaam, Kigali, Addis Ababa, and that's going to keep happening. So it's no longer constrainable for young people, because we will look for opportunities where they are. Yeah. And where they don't exist, people will build some, because if you think about what has fundamentally happened, even let's say the traditional taxi space, right? The traditional housing space, or the hotel, hospitality space, if you think about what Airbnb does, and most of these other things, you will keep seeing lots of those solutions coming up. But fundamentally, at the root of it, it's big problems that need to be solved. For instance, if you think about transport, it wasn't working very well. Now, suddenly, it's the main major way earner for drivers. So you're going to keep seeing this to all levels. And this is now why you see why platforms like Fundis are coming up, right? In another 10 years now, if you're not online, it's going to be very hard for you to find work, right? Because you want to leverage on, before, if you are bringing, let's say, a plumber to your house, you have no idea who else they have served before, if they have ever stolen or done a bad job before. But now, you have a full career identity where you can actually look at this person. Who are they? Where did they train? Who have they served in the last 10 years? What did the people they served have to say about them, right? And a general score. So you can be able to say, as apart from this person is consistently falling behind, therefore there is an issue with how their skills look like, therefore they may need to go and upgrade. It even gives us now a policy basis, evidence-based policy basis for, if you're making policies towards targeting the informal sector, what data are you relying on? So this is where that is it. So it's going to change fundamentally everything. Yes.
Wow. Amazing.
Well, Alex, in your journey of business, what have been your highest moments and maybe your lowest lows?
Well, interesting you ask that. We were having this conversation yesterday with a couple of friends. We have been very unfortunate as a tech space, let's say this month, that there's a platform known as Kun that just closed maybe yesterday and the day before, and it was multiple jobs being lost suddenly. And I think Swivel closed down earlier in the month. Sometime last year, Safe Border, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, they closed down. So I define entrepreneurship mostly for me as an experience. Think of it if you are riding a lion. So everybody looks at you and goes, wow, right? But for you, every single moment, you are looking at it and thinking, this thing could eat me alive any time. So there are definite highs and definite lows. But my highs, for instance, have been over time. Now we 2.5 years old, going to 3 years. Every time a customer returns for a second job, right? Pure validation that they see value in what we are doing. Being highlighted. So, for instance, we have won a couple of awards. One major one being 2020, where we won the MEST Microsoft Africa Challenge, which, if you're in Kenya, by extension, what we now call the Silicon Savannah. If you're in Kenya, and you're in this space, you're potentially on the cream of the rest of the world. You can compete favorably with a lot. And when you win something of that level where, I mean, there are some guys who have gone from that competition to do so well.
Okay.
So getting some of those validation, even for us now, just being able to start getting capital, and not just local capital, but also, you know, investments that are coming from outside the country. It's a sudden validation that, yeah, we see what you guys are doing. We see what it could mean for the rest of the country. But for me, maybe the lowest point, and this was at a point where we had contemplated shutting down Fundis, was towards the end of 2018, where things have not gone really well. You have struggled, and it just happened we were having 2 bad quarters in a row. So towards the end of 2018, we had already told our guys, look, by New Year we don't have a business, looking for jobs. I myself had already even gotten an offer to go and work for a competitor, and I was considering that option seriously. Then 5 days to closure, best Christmas ever. On the morning of 25th, we get our first term sheet, our first investor on that day. And suddenly when they say, you know, it's just darkest before dawn, that has always been the lesson for me, right? Jack Ma used to tell his people in the early days that, you know, today is harder. Tomorrow will even be harder. But the day after is beautiful. The problem is most of us die tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So for me, that has always the thing I remind myself, right? Resilience is important for every entrepreneur, and not just every entrepreneur. A startup is anything that is being built in moments of uncertainty. So if you're a missionary, an apostle, you're starting a church in this economy, you are an entrepreneur. If you're in a big company building a new product, you are an entrepreneur, because you're building under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So that applies, be it an NGO, be it a government unit, be it a new social venture, whatever it is. Resilience is key. It's the hallmark of greatness, be it in a person, be it in a country, be it in any outfit. That's how I would sum up the high end and lows of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the people you mentioned, Swivel, Safe Boda, Kun, you know, what does that tell us as a country? Are we in a bad place? Is it a question of bad strategy on these startups and all?
Well, there can never be a right or wrong answer to that question, because the problem with most of these rationales and explanations is most of us are often in a spectator perspective, not an actual participant position, right? So it's very hard to say, and I want to believe, I was putting myself in the shoes of the Kun guys and thinking, I'm sure they tried to do everything before that decision was made. So whatever I still keep insisting for me is, before you build anything, because right now it has become suddenly cool to have a business card that reads, I'm a co-founder of this, co-founder of that. It looks stylish, it's trendy. What we need to go back to is a fundamental question we need to keep asking ourselves is, are you solving a bite shark kind of a problem? And a bite shark kind of a problem for me is, one, it's very painful. Think of being bitten by a shark. It's very painful. But at the same time, it's large enough, right? So it's a bite shark kind of a problem. It's a problem worth solving, right? Try to think of life without M-Pesa. Where would we be? Try to think of life without Airbnb. Where could we be? Think of life without Uber. How far back do we go? So for me, my only comment would be, you can never really tell what went wrong or what went well, because, I mean, like we said, you know, there's a lot of preparation that goes into this. There's a lot of strategy and execution that goes into this. There's no strategy that survives first encounter with the market. So I think there's a lot of things you'd have to look at to make that judgment. But the validation is, we're in the right time. This is the best time to be building anything. Literally, you and I, over a cup of coffee, can say, let's go into business tomorrow. And we're in business tomorrow. That's why kids now from dormitories and dining halls will be able to build what initially you'd need a lot of capital to do. So for me, validation is, look at the kind of capital that is coming into Africa, into East Africa, into Nairobi, into Kenya. right? That should tell you there's a lot that's happening, and it's only gonna keep going. But of course, even you also look at the investment market, what's happening. There's also now a sort of an aversion towards tech. So it can no longer be just about baseless valuations, right? People need to see value. So it's value of a valuation, right? End of day, sales fixes everything, right? We need to think around, if you are doing this, how many people are actually seeing actual impact? Because what we need to get rid of is briefcase enterprises that don't have an actual impact on the ground. So it's the best of time for this space, in my view.
Just give us an idea. How much capital is coming into Kenya and East Africa, especially in that tech space? Because I don't think we have an idea. I think we're all looking at the cost of fuel. We're looking at the cost of living that's going through the roof. But we forget that there's another side to this paradigm.
So there's a lot of reports that are coming up now consistently, and they're even really good spaces to keep tracking this, because now if you're gonna think about, let's say, maybe even the domestic or foreign investment that's going into this, is, first of all, there are many spaces that we have. So if you thought, for instance, think about what's happening in infrastructure development. So it's not just the expressways and the port enlargement, and there's a lot of capital going into that. If you came to spaces like now where we are in these tech outfits, right? Again, you have to think of it from spaces to spaces. So for instance, if I were to speak specifically for what is now being looked as the gig economy. So brilliant work now has been done, like now the likes of, Massicorps, GAZ, around giving us a report around how much is going into this. But the thing with it is there is still a lot of undisclosed investment that's happening. The one thing we know is that it's on the rise for all spaces. So you'd be thinking about, if you were to think about, let's say, the PropTech space, the construction space, the InstaTech, insurance, convergence of insurance and technology, convergence of health and technology. The statistics are just mind-boggling, and to actually be able to crunch, there are a lot of sources you can keep looking on. So the likes of, Brighter Bridges. So there are many places to keep a tracker, because it's changing. Now, if you've noticed, every single day you will hear this company has raised this X amount of money. The other one has raised this amount of money. And we are not even reporting what's happening as domestic, because there are a lot of now local investors. The people who are traditionally investing in real estate and in plots now are seeing a newer area, because if you think some of the very active angel investors that we rely on as local founders, most of them is not even being reported, and yet there's a significant amount of investment that's going into that space. So there's a couple of places to keep tracking, keep seeing what figures are being reported, but it's like your daily dosage of news every morning. Every single day, there's something new being reported in all the ecosystems. Yes.
Maybe just one final question before we take the break.
Yes.
A lot of the tech space has been associated with outsiders.
Yes.
Recently, I can't remember, but I just saw, a lot of money was coming in, and the owners of that company were, I think, one was British, one was, 3 white guys. And look, I have no problem with that.
Yes.
But I'm just asking, where are the Africans, where are the Kenyans in this space? So is that a cause for concern?
It's again a sensationalized conversation, because it depends on what side of it you look at it. Of course, there is the factual fact check that I won't go into, because I'm actually fundraising, so at the risk of saying anything that could work otherwise, right? So the truth be told is, think of it this way. You and I come from Kenya. We went into Boston. You're an investor, I'm an entrepreneur. You ran into me in Boston, building fundis in Boston. You're an investor. Who are you likely to invest in? Are you likely to invest in the guys you found in Boston, or the guys that you know from back home, you have done business with before, you potentially even know the school they went with? Maybe even we went to the same college, or I'm in school with your son or somebody you know. So that's more looking at it from that perspective. But end of day, one thing that needs to be said is that investors invest in value. And whoever has value, you will command an attention. So I think what we need to focus more on, let's not, make it a ratio conversation. Of course, there are those elements, and some of them I have experienced them. But the more thing we need to focus on is let's prioritize value over everything else, right? If I'm an investor and you're likely to make me money, honestly, I don't care what language you speak, what creed, what color, what background, right? Because it's people's money. It's real people's money. And people are looking at, times 5, times 10 return on what they're doing. So I think that's what we need to emphasize. Just build value, right? The old saying this says that if you build, they will come. I think we need to keep hammering that. Focus on value, right? Everything else is a byproduct of value. I think that's how I would put it at, the risk of not going into a fact-checking conversation around, creed, race, capital, whether there is disenfranchisement in it. So there's a lot of conversation there, and there are experts who have made name around talking some of these things. But I think for us, is let's put it at value. If you're to building, focus on value.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We need to take a short break. I hope you're enjoying the conversation. After the break, we continue this conversation and we ask ourselves, where is the church, or what is the role of the church in all this? Is the church aware of what is going on? Is the church alive to what is going on? Don't go away.
Life Church International Nairobi invites you to the Standing Strong Ministers Conference 2022 that will be held on 5th to 8th July 2022 at the Apostolic House, Kenya Cinema Plaza, Moi Avenue, Nairobi, hosted by Apostle David and Pastor Asunta Juma. Morning sessions will be from 9:30 to 11 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. to 12:45 p.m. Afternoon sessions will be from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and the Apostolic Clinic from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. The guest ministers will be Bishop Stanley Mwalili of Green Pastures Tabernacle, Apostle William Kimani of Kingdom Seekers Fellowship, Bishop Titus Mbai of Destiny Worship Center, Thika, Apostle Yemi Adefarasin from Nigeria, and Bishop Isaka Wawire of Word of Faith Church, Mbale. The theme of this conference is Luke chapter 22 verse 31 to 32. This conference will be live on Elevate TV and streaming on Facebook and YouTube.
Good marketing makes the company look smart. Great marketing makes the customer feel smart. Are you looking for a place to advertise your upcoming conference, church meeting, or ladies meeting? Look no further. Elevate TV is offering you a chance to advertise from as low as 5,000 Kenyan shillings. Talk to us today. Call us on 0705 872237.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We continue our discussion with Alex on technology. I think it's a very interesting discussion, especially for those of us who are young and are young at heart. Bwana Alex, maybe let me just get through to this. Where do you see the church is in all this? Because one of my biggest concerns, and I think I had raised this with Gideon, where technology is concerned, the church is not known as an early adapter. I know most of the time we first criticize, we first complain, condemn, and then later on, that's when we awaken to that reality. Where is the church in all this? And what do you see as the role of the church?
Right, and it's actually a critical one. So I think maybe 2-3 months ago, I read a book titled Pastorpreneur by Dr. Jesse Jackson. And I think the foreword to that book, I think, has been done by Dr. Maxwell. And then right now I'm reading a book titled Simple Church. And the simple revolution has been going on for some time around the enterprise space. So if you think around how Apple designs their product, it's about simplicity. If you think about how Google even designs their products, about simplicity. Now, the title to that book, Simple Church, Returning to Jesus' Way of Making Disciples, if I'm not mistaken. And it's around 4 principles. It's about clarity, it's about movement, it's about alignment, and it's about focus, right? Four main things around that book. Now, they go on to say that the modern church as we know it has a rapidly expiring shelf life. And this is a study based on 400 American churches. So in fact, I'm using that as a strategy book for what we are doing with Fundis. And they go on to say, so think of if Jesus was in person and alive today as it was in his days, right? How would he be approaching things? So there's a lot of whistle blowing and drum beating that's happening around the church. And for all its worth, the commission was to go ye into the world. That's where the people are. And we learn significantly a lot from the place where Jesus was crucified. It's an intersection of cultures, of creeds, of people. It's an actual marketplace, right? So the church now needs to jump into this conversation with one hat put on. And that hat is relevance, right? You mentioned the word early adopter, right? It's a very techish term. Like I told you earlier, the definition of a startup is anything that's being built around conditions of extreme uncertainty, right? I've been in church for, let's say now, and I've had the privilege to even be involved in full-time ministry.
Mention that you have theological studies. Maybe you can add
yes.
that.
So I also did a bit of, done a small diploma from the Word of Faith Bible Institute.
Okay.
And I'm actually enrolled in Pan-Africa Christian University now, but for starting out for business leadership. But I'm more interested while doing that, studying a few more things around the place of the ministry in modern day life. So one, the church needs to jump into the conversation about relevance, right? Just like young people have become averse to marketing, we are no longer moved by ads, right? Our first instinct when I see a YouTube ad is to click to remove it, right?
Skip.
The traditional antics that we used to use for marketing, for enterprise, and for the church can no longer cut it today. So we need, first of all, to see the church as a foremost solution builder for the society. There are fundamental problems that cannot be solved anywhere else. The best of us, end of day, there's that part where after all else fails, we know where we go to for our solutions, right? So the church needs to come to a place of relevance. Relevance in that we need to be involved in conversations around all these places. Now, I would base that also, I've really loved another book by Ed Silver, also Anointed for Business. And there's that saying there that, God loves Bill Gates too, right? And we need to stop this suspicion towards marketplace ministers, right? Because the title, that pastorpreneur title, it's about what if pastors and entrepreneurs came together? Because think about it. What is it that we really, really are good at as entrepreneurs? It's patterns recognition. It's problems recognition, right? So God's calling for humanity, God's heart for mankind, intersected with the quickness and the motive for business. That's how we quickly need to move, right? So it's one and the same, right? When we come to church, it's a couple of hours on a Sunday. Then we are in the marketplace the rest of the time. So that's where we should actually be manifesting.
Yeah.
Right? So for us, the conversation here is about bringing the church to relevance. And for me, where it pertains to young people, right? Because we want to make sense of things, right? And in making sense of things, we have a way of figuring out what works and what doesn't. So what we need to have more conversations around is, how do we make the gospel of Jesus Christ more relevant in today's world? Because there are real hearts, there are real needs, just as there were 10, 30, 50 years ago that need to be met. Revivals are still needed. But now, if you saw when Facebook now became Meta, right? Metaverse, the first things they have been now encouraging guys come on board is the church, right? So people are now buying properties in the metaverse, right? So jumping in with that flow and understanding that relevance is of importance, right? So you will notice in most churches there is an age that's no longer being seen, right? So we grew up Sunday school, teens church, youth church. But then suddenly there's a gap in transition to adulthood where there's a certain, the people like I who are now getting married now, you'll notice there's a place where we no longer want to be told because we don't connect with what are these guys doing, right? So we need to come to a place where the same way you would be shopping for a car, the same way you would be shopping for a mall where you go, the same way you would be shopping for a shoe, the same where young people are shopping for churches, right? We need something that relates, connects with me. And think of it, everything that we are talking about tech, about where we are in terms of status of things, it's about connectedness. So how connected is the church with the actual hearts, with the actual needs, with the actual problems? Because whatever must not be forgotten is that the church is the forefront of solutions. It's a solution center. Critical solutions that cannot be found, right, elsewhere. We are that set the way the Bible says, set on a hill that cannot be hidden. So nobody lights a light and it puts it under a bushel, right? So that's the recognition that needs to come into place. And we think the clergy, church leaders, church management, ministry management, we need to come to a place where let's see what we can work with the marketplace ministers, because I think that's what I mentioned. I'm very much involved around with the Kingdom Connect, because this is it's a community of kingdom-minded entrepreneurs and professionals, and we think, just like I said, that God loves Bill Gates too. There's a lot of things that the church starts to gain, and I think for me, bottom line is still relevance. I think the relevance bit is whatever is being missed, right? Because relevance means now, can we use the current tech space towards reaching the lost? That's what I would be thinking.
Okay. Well, very interesting. So where do we start? Where does the church start? I mean, we've talked about relevance, we've talked about using the tech space to reach the lost, and we talked about your engagement also with the Kingdom Connect and so on and so forth. Where do we start? What do you think is a good start point?
Well, there's an old saying that, success leaves clues. And I honestly believe that if you do what other people do, you will get the same results as they do. And if you don't, you won't, and life just doesn't care. So there are a lot of patterns that can be modeled around. Now, this is the thing. So it happened, during when I was working in a full ministry setting, I made a point at one point to try to, as much as, read everything that my pastor had in his home library. So I remember reading a lot of, and I have just seen some of those books when I was hanging out there, church planting. If you think about models we have learned in the past, such as, the home cell fellowship, right? So right now, there are particular pattern recognitions around people who are doing this really well. So one thing I think it's still important for every person who has been called with a particular mandate to stick to the knitting, stick to your knitting, whatever you are called to do, stick to that. But learn as much as you can from others who are doing something that seems to be working. So I think the old saying, "No man is an island still." I mean, there's this meme that keeps going around. Churches are not cults, right? That you cannot learn from what others are doing. So I think, first of all, success lives close. So we have seen, so for instance, the book I just mentioned, Simple Church, right? A study of around 400 American ministries. We need to start having those kinds of identification in our own spaces, right? Because you can't copy like for the same thing for business, you just can't copy what works in the West and bring it here. I think it's the same thing for ministry. You can't pick patterns developed elsewhere. But I think biographies, autobiographies exist for a reason. There's a lot that can be, can be learned from that. I remember one time when I was reading the biography of Dr. David Oyedepo and how he developed Covenant University and Landmark University, that he took a visit to Oral Roberts universities, and while he was touring the campus at some point, he says he spinned and turned around and said, "No, this is God, but it can happen anywhere." I think that's the basic fundamentals, right? Whatever we admire, whatever you see, it's things we can admire and things we can implement. So I think the first thing is a lot of looking around, observation needs to happen. It's where really as entrepreneurs we are good at what are other people doing, and I think that's where we come in terms of working with the church. Let's figure out what's working, right? Because not everybody is having the same experience, right? There are some guys who are having a really good experience, they are learning a lot. So picking that and domesticating it, whatever God's mandate is for what you have been sent to do, right? Because I believe everybody has been commissioned for something different. So sticking to that knitting, and then understanding, keep the core, but you can keep changing everything else. So that would be a starting point, at least for me, that I would see.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Now to the young people looking at you and admiring you, with your entrepreneurial instinct, what would you tell them? Can anyone be an entrepreneur, or is it just for specific people like Alex?
Well, it's the traditional question whether good sales people are born or they are made, right? So, well, it's interesting we're in a time where you now see business cards and LinkedIn titles that people now define themselves as entrepreneurs, right? As a title, just as you'd be calling yourself a doctor, an evangelist. Now, entrepreneurship is becoming a sort of a title. But at the core of it, I had the privilege, maybe 5 days ago, to meet Vusi, and Vusi says that every time somebody tells them they want to go into entrepreneurship, the first thing he asks them is, what's your threshold for pain, right?
Okay.
What's your threshold for pain, right? So how do you treat disappointment, right? Because the traditional adage in sales is still true for entrepreneurship that, 4 out of every 5 sales calls end up with a no. And that no is not personal, right? The no means I'm not convinced. The no means you have not given me reasons to buy, right? The no means tell me some more. So it's the same thing for entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, the guiding factor is that we are living in a very interesting time that there's a lot of opportunities, right? The problems we see in our society today, the other sugar-coated side, right? And in the true sense of that word, sugar-coated, there's sugar on that other side, is opportunities, right? So it means healthcare is not working well. What solutions can we build? It's opportunities for young people. Education is not working well. It's opportunity for young people. Transport is not working well. It's opportunities for young people. But truth, at the same time, is, make no mistake, it's not easy. though it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, end of day for me, normally I say purpose is a conversation that needs to be had more often, right?
Okay.
Dr. Miles Munro said that, when purpose is not known, abuse becomes inevitable. So if you jump into entrepreneurship because Alex is in it and it looks trendy, it looks cool, the story behind the glory is that most of us don't talk of the days of being auctioned, the days of going, hungry, for days. And that is the complete picture, right? It's not a photo montage where, when you look at the TV series that we watch, a couple of guys in a garage started something, then the next day they are on the beach, with some mojitos and having a good life. The truth behind it, there is a lot of intentional work that goes into it. One of the most important things for me that has guided me as a young entrepreneur, and I think I read this in Second Chronicles, chapter number 17. And this is concerning the young man, Jotham, who began to reign at the age of 25 years. Now, if you read it, I think at around verse 6, it says that, and so Jotham became great because he prepared his ways before the Lord his God, right? The key thing there is that he prepared his ways, right? So there is what to be before you become, right? The rule around 10,000 hours, it has not changed, right?
So what is this rule?
The rule is work has to go in.
Okay.
Right? I'll tell you the secret. The secret is that there is no secret. Right? You have to do the work, right? Repetition is the mother of all skills. You do it, right? What do you do when it doesn't work? You go back again and do it. What if it doesn't work? You go again and do it. What if it doesn't work? You go again and do it. You do it till something eventually works, right? There's a saying that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's the same thing. Success is an intersection of, opportunities with your preparation. So I think nothing is easy. There's no quick success. I love also touching that with the story of David. Yeah, David was anointed king long before he became king. But, when Saul is troubled, right? And it said, so let's find someone who is, cunning in playing so that when he's troubled, he can play, right? Then one of the servants goes on to say that, he has seen, right? The son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite. And there's a resume that goes into it. Who is a cunning player, right? Who is a mighty, valiant man. Who is a man of war. Who is prudent in matters. Who is a comely person. So the anointing is good, right? But anointing does not replace training, right? End of day, bottom line is, you want to get into this space, right? It's good. Admire what's going in there, right? It's worth aspiring for. But remember, there is a lot of work that goes into it. The work is where the rubber meets the road.
Wow.
Because that's the other side to it, right? Everything, there's nothing, if you want something, there has something to be. So the product is part of the process. So I think that's how I would say. So get into it, because end of day, if your personality allows you to be able to withstand some of these things, right? Because, nobody prepared me on the dilemma of being an employer. Right? So I remember one time.
It's a good thing to be an employer.
It's a good thing to be an employer, right? I remember one place where I worked and I think it was my last place before I started Funis, and we are still very close with the CEO, because I still visit sometimes with my team and learn a couple of things here and there. I remember one time it was really hard. I think my last salary, they paid me with a tablet, right?
Oh, they didn't give you cash?
There was no cash. Okay. So the tablet I was using for work was my last pay. And I remember he told me, Alex, someday you will be in my shoes and you will understand. Now I've been at that point where you don't know what you're going to pay people with the next month. And business has to continue. and you have to put on a strong face. You have to lead from the front. So that's what I call the dilemma of being an employer, right? Where people feel aggrieved. Yeah? They're even taking you to court for, what we call unlawful termination, right? But truth is, the resources are not there, right?
Yeah.
I was mentioning about Kun yesterday, and I remember I told guys, I don't have the willpower that this guy had, that he went on LinkedIn and posted on, we are sorry guys, this is our last day. Because you see, it's about real people's life. I don't know what you would be telling people.
Yes.
So for me, that's how I've tested both sides, right? So I now know the dilemma of being an employer, and I believe we need to bloom where we are planted. I honestly do believe good followers make good leaders, right? It's important to go through the process of being made before you become, right? I've realized, and I see this pattern, even with Fundis, even when we are onboarding artisans. I've seen a very clear pattern between an artisan who has been employed and an artisan who has been in self-employment all their life, right? I've seen a difference in first-time founders who have worked for somebody else, they have reported to a boss, compared to guys who believe, from the... Well, it's a badge of honor if you graduated and you've never worked for anybody else, and you've never had to report to anybody else. But truth be told, the systemic thinking, the grounding, the training, right? I believe there's a reason why Moses spent so much time in the valleys
house
before getting into that. So I believe for me that process of there is what to be before you become. So I think we are more passionate now at Fundis right now, thinking around what, let's say for this informal sector, what would mentorships look like? Like that's what we were mentioning here. What would the internships look like? What would the apprenticeships look like? Because there's nothing really new under the face of the sun. All the problems you are going through, somebody else has gone through it, right? Has documented it, has perhaps even put it in a book, and they're selling it to you for 1,000 Kenya shillings. But you would rather go through 10 years of experience, you learn the same thing. So I think experience is not the best teacher, right? Because there's no badge of honor. Failure is painful in my experience, right? I've been unsuccessful with 2 startups before Fundis, right? So I know the pain of starting out, calling people. And when you're starting out, the people who fund you, we say it's family, friends, and fools. Right? So there's a good chance you're going to fail. So I've seen the pain of 6 months down the line telling guys, hey, I wasted your 6 months. Perhaps you should have gone and done your master's back then, right? So for me now, I'm more interested around how do we reduce wastage? Because I think now of any new thing you want to do, it can potentially be condensed into a hypothesis. It can be condensed into an experiment, right? Again, I'll go back to my mention on Dr. David Oyedepo. He says, when he had an 18 hours encounter to go into ministry, right? The next thing he did is that he spent time reading 39 biographies of successful churches, right? So I think for me, the process of putting yourselves in the shoes of, I need to know this thing, I need to know how it works, ultimately is what you'll see end of day is one person on stage and the other one who never gets it there. So I think that's how I would wrap that particular bit up. Yes.
I would love to your opinion. I know we touched on this before, but we've just mentioned a number of startups that folded. We mentioned Kun yesterday. I remember on a men's platform I'm on, there was a lot of discussion about it, whether they were too ambitious. I can't speak into the details because I didn't follow it up. We've talked about Swivel. We've talked about a number of tech companies. What are the challenges from your perspective? What do you think the issues were? And how do we prepare? Because this tech space, like you said, is growing, but yet every time it grows, it's like we take one step forward and we take 2 steps backward. We take 1 step forward and we embrace tech, then all of a sudden Kun goes down. And we wonder, should we go there or should we stay where we are? Then we take another step forward, then again we take 2 steps backward. How should we approach
in
this?
conjunction with that, earlier on you mentioned that the global investors are becoming more and more averse.
Yes.
So what are the challenges? Or you shed some light around that.
So, allow me to answer it this way. You know, whereas it's now really hot, a really hot conversation trending on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, around Kun wrapping up. Whereas that happened, this same week I had now the privilege. So I spent a couple of hours last week at NILAB, and the founder initially NILAB is now also the guy who is doing Kidato, and it's a new model for entire schooling. And it was about a group of, let's say, 20 guys who are meeting Vusi Thempekwana, and the conversations were just around what's the future of tech on the continent. And I felt really privileged to have been in that meeting, because I think there were about maybe 5 Y Combinator companies from Kenya, so the likes of now Patika, Kuhaso, Boya. And one of the conversations we had as a fireside chat was with the Sandy CEO Mesh, and them talking about right now they are on the roadmap towards an IPO. They have, I think, over 400 staff across 4 markets. I think this year they are on track towards raising $100 million, right, for that. So 2 exact kind of startups in the same space, same space, right? One growing, one having challenges, right? I'll want to preempt and say failure really is what you see it. I think we need to start having conversations, and you will see, because I even shared a recap of what we talked with Vusi, and Vusi was so big in that particular meeting talking about your willingness to fail before you succeed, right? Okay. So I think for me, we need to start, first of all, replacing the word failure with feedback.
Okay.
When things don't work, really what we get is feedback, right? Notice the difference when a man says, I failed 3 times, and when a man says, I'm a failure, right? Failure is never a personality. It's an event, can be overcome. So the way I would say is, I've spent now a lot of time in what we call, customer discovery and customer development. It's very important that at the core of all solutions to remember that for all this invention and innovation, the bottom line is meeting people's needs.
Okay.
It's feeling, meeting people's, hearts, meeting them, challenges, solving them. So where we are headed now, and I also saw something last week around now what is now being called the tech bubble, right? It's already hit in Southeast Asia. I think I saw last week that SoftBank, I think, reported a loss of about $17 billion US dollars in a period they were projecting, I think, $39 billion increment, positive, but they hit
negative.
So now what is happening, that what I said earlier is we need to encourage more of us in this space to go for value of evaluation. So I've been incredibly privileged the last 1 year to have had international business mentors, some of them who have even taken companies to their stock exchanges, right? And it's a huge privilege when you're spending an hour or 2 every week with somebody who has grown to that level. So the thing about what I'm seeing is customer discovery, for me, allows anyone to be able to tell way early whether I'm just enjoying myself or being fancy with myself, or there's a real need to solve here. Now, I'm not saying anyone who has folded that they were not solving any problem. I don't know. Yeah. But then adding to it is, think of the process of validation of value. Validation of value means it's not just now pitch deck kinds of investments where people are getting crazy valuations that you cannot explain, right? So it's about getting value, like real value as a business where can you be able to show traction in terms of tell people, all right, so in the last 6 months, this is what we have done. This is where we are. And this is where we want to go. And therefore, if you give me this match, I'll be able to do A, B, C, D.
Okay.
So at the bottom line of it for me is value of evaluation. We are now operating on an approach as Fundis that sales fixes everything, right? I may not know how to tell my story. I may not know people. I may not be well connected. But if I showed up tomorrow, I'm trying to raise money from you and tell you, hey, by the way, while we're having this conversation, last month, I just did, what, $1 million US in sales or in net margins, right? Suddenly that conversation really changes. So I think we are moving to a place where, one, I think we need to encourage more people. Small businesses are good. But let's build with the world in mind. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm still going to go back to that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Let's build for the world, right? Because it's the same way the people we are competing with in Silicon Valley and in Beijing and in Korea, that's what they are thinking. They're not building for the neighborhood. And it's okay to start with your neighborhood, but build with the globe. I think that's what globalization should look like, right? Build with the globe in mind, but localize like crazy, town by town, city by city. Whatever works in Machakos may not work in Nairobi, may not work in Kilifi, may not work in Kisumu. But it doesn't mean you're not solving problems worth solving in Kilifi, in Kigali, in Addis Ababa, right? So I think for me, getting to more of that mindset that, we reinforce more of our beliefs in ourselves. It's a journey for me I'm using, learning from other guys who have been there. What are their challenges, right? How can I condense their decades into days, right? So if I know you made this mistake, I want to be sure I don't make it again. I want to be sure I don't go through the same headaches you went through. I think there is that saying, the good thing is that it's the best of time. If you're building a tech company, you're out there, this is actually the best of time. This is actually the right time to be in it. I would encourage you to quickly get onto it because, every single way you're thinking about, we are not in markets where there's a lot of, saturation. We are all growing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to solve and there's room for everybody. I think that's how I would see it.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, our time is up. But I think that has been a great conversation. Technology is something that is unlocking in this country. Technology, I believe, is the way of the future. And as we begin to engage in terms of jobs, in terms of career paths, in terms of even business investments, one of the things you need to keep an eye on is what is happening that takes place and what is happening in that tech world. In the last 1 or 2 months, we've had Google coming in to open an office in Kenya. We've had Microsoft coming in to open an office in Kenya. And for me, that is a statement about what is going on in this nation. And what you and I need to do is find a way of partnering. The church should no longer be called late to the party. We should be able to get there first. And I believe that if we get there first, we can control the conversation. And we can control what people are discussing. And we can control even the future that this trend or this technology is taking us into. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Please like, please subscribe. Please tell us what you enjoyed about the show. Until next week, the Lord bless you and keep you and cause the light of his countenance shine upon you and give you peace on every side. Amen.
Amen.